did, we find that there is an American convoy being undertaken with over 500 vehicles taking part of that convoy that leaves on July the 4th. We find that there's an idea for a convoy from Europe of over 30 vehicles heading out at this moment to punch through. And we find out that on the 4th of October, the British are going to go again. We're going to do it again. On the 4th of October, George Galloway intends to lead a new convoy, a bigger convoy through Europe. And this convoy is going to rally support throughout Europe, is going to have feeder convoys throughout Europe that are going to join it, and then we are going to bust through the blockade again. We're going to do this repeatedly until the Israelis, the Americans, the Egyptians, the British understand that this blockade will not be tolerated. It must be brought down. And that is the reason for Viva Palestina. It's the reason why Viva Palestina will continue, and it's the reason why on October 4th we set off through Europe again, and we intend to go through the Rafah crossing again. There is another point about the Viva Palestina convoy that is not really talked about. You will have noticed that in the mass media there is no discussion of Viva Palestina. In the mass media, there was an unholy silence about Viva Palestina. There was almost what felt like a conspiracy about Viva Palestina. The only time that Viva Palestina hit the headlines was when 9 of our drivers were falsely arrested on the motorway near Blackburn. 9 drivers were arrested with the press in attendance. This was a deliberate and political smear upon the convoy. Why? Because the Labour government was desperately afraid of what this convoy represented. This convoy represented ordinary people up and down the country mobilised in support of Palestine. It represented everything that the British foreign policy is not. It represented support and solidarity amongst the peoples of the world. It represented support and mobilisation amongst the Muslims of Britain. And the government hated that. The government hated the idea that the Muslims of Britain have a political voice. And it is that that led to the smear campaign against the convoy. We find, of the 9 that were arrested, 6 were released within 12 hours, 3 were junior imams. The police admitted effectively that they got it wrong. They paid for these 6 to go to Chilvers to meet up with the convoy. Secondly, the 3 from Burnley, 3 lads from Burnley were arrested as well. They were held for 6 days under terrorism legislation. The claim being that these were active terrorists. Well, actually, these were defendants, these were defence witnesses in a trial, a terrorism trial that had been taking place the year previously and had been subject to a campaign of intimidation that had forced them from their homes in High Wycombe and forced them to move to Burnley. That's the reality of what had taken place. They were being subject to political intimidation by the police. The fact is that none of these people were charged. They had vehicles that were emblazoned with, "To the children of Gaza with love." They intended to go through some of the most notorious checkpoints in the world, for instance at the Algerian border, that no terrorist in his right mind would attempt to go through. There was absolutely no way at all that these people who were carrying nappies, who were carrying toys, who were carrying presents for Palestinian children could be classed as terrorists, yet the government attempted it. Subsequently, we have found that a number of our drivers have been the victims of intimidation. The police turn up at their homes and threaten their families. The police turn up at their homes and say, if you don't get that driver back from the convoy, he may die. We have documentary proof that this type of thing has been taking place. And now, what have the Charity Commission attempted? The Charity Commission have attempted to paralyse Viva Palestina by stopping all our accounts, preventing us sending money out to Gaza. The British government is in a war against Viva Palestina. because Viva Palestina represents a very real victory. A very real victory against British foreign policy, a very real victory for every one of you that has been campaigning and that has been fundraising. The police at the moment, when they arrested the 9 outside Blackburn, what were they interested in? What were they questioned about? They were questioned about the fundraising activities. They were questioned about who was raising money. They were questioned about Viva Palestina and who was organising Viva Palestina. They were questioned about what was taking place in the mosques. What were the networks? The 6 lads from Blackburn who were released and the police admitted were held wrongly, had half of their cargo impounded. They had their mobile phones taken from them on the basis that the police were going to reconstruct their networks, their social networks. We need to be aware that this type of thing is taking place. We need to be aware that the attempt to fundraise, the attempt to stand by the Palestinians is now considered potentially a terrorist offence. It's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. When this government changed the guidelines for the Terrorism Act last November, they turned it into what they called non-violent extremism. That means that anybody who fundraises for the Palestinians is considered potentially a terrorist. Anyone that supports the people of Gaza is potentially a terrorist. I am proud to support the people of Gaza. I am proud to fundraise for the people of Gaza, and I am proud of the fact that we handed over 100 vehicles to the people of Gaza. I am proud of the fact that we raised over £1 million. I am ashamed of the government and their warships off the coast of Gaza. I am proud that we are going to go again, and I would urge every one of you to be part of that process, to be part of the fundraising, and to be part of the mobilisation. There is nothing to fear. This government is on the ropes. We can deliver and we can breach this blockade.